Blog Talk Radio.
You took my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where they feel like they don't got nothing to live for anyway.
Usually I might clown, but right now, this one's for Mike Brown, so pipe down. We gotta stop all the rioting in the streets. We ain't doing nothing but proving we animals to police. Another child dies, another mother cries. Another neighborhood left with a whole bunch of whys. Why did they pursue him? Why they had to shoot him? But I don't think that the answer is everybody looting. But forget that cop, he deserves state time. They let Zimmerman off, this cop ain't learned from Trayvon. I'm just sitting here dropping a little tear of knowledge. Cause Mike Brown ain't even lived to see a day at college. He would've started soon, that as an empty seat in class. All because of these demons hiding behind a badge. So screw that badge, screw your protection. And screw that law, carry your weapon. But some of these stores y'all looting is black owned. I know it's for a cause, but some of them still have families at home. It's not a black or white thing, it's about abusing the law. I can't imagine Dorian's face when he saw Mike fall. My tears wetting the page while I'm writing this. I know y'all so in tune, if you not, why you fighting it? Just let go. Let your heart beat and never lose control. And God rest his soul, cause I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown. He represents us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police. So how I know I ain't gonna end up under a similar sheet. So I am Mike Brown, cause I'm out here with my homie. I'm just walking my block, man, everybody know me. So I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown, homie, I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown.
He shot again, and once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the earth, and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn, and he fired several more shots.
I am Mike Brown, I am Sean Bell. I am Larry Davis bleeding in my dingy cell. I am Angelo Clark, I am Oscar Grant. I am Dante Price doing what you others can't. I am Bo Morrison, Melvin Lawhorn. I am the voice of these people cause they are long gone. Let's go behind the badge, fall behind the beat. Behind the politics, they wonder why we don't trust police. They wonder why we carry nines on us. They look for drugs but shoot for anything they find on us. I am Justin Stitt fighting for my life kicking. Slowly dying cause police said I look suspicious. We are all of these people in so many ways. I am Raymond Allen left to die for 2 days. I just bought a new hoodie, guess I'm Trayvon. I am Dwayne Brown, lay down, try not to die. All the halls I feel my heart beating slower, listen. And all you dealing with is maybe gonna lose your pension. You might not notice this, but this the new form of lynching. I got my hands up, but still I see that cop inching. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. I am Mike Brown, he represents us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police. So how I know I ain't gonna end up under a similar sheet. So I am Mike Brown, cause I'm out here with my homie. I'm just walking my block, man, everybody know me. So I am Mike Brown, I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown, homie, I am Mike Brown. I am
You
Mike
took my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where they feel like they don't got nothing to live for anyway. They're going to try to take me out anyway.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Friday night's edition of Center Stage. I'm Kheri, Hines, your host. Tonight, this is a no-hold-back show. We are putting it all out there. Call a friend, call a neighbor, call a coworker or a family member, and tell them tonight Center Stage is about to discuss the topic, Ferguson, the calm before the storm. I repeat, tonight's topic is Ferguson, the calm before the storm. Tonight's show will focus on what happens if Officer Darren Wilson is not indicted for the murder of Mike Brown. The world is watching as Ferguson keeps leaking information from the grand jury about Officer Darren Wilson's account of what happened August 9th. Also, the autopsy report findings. Is this all to gauge the temperature of the protests and the protesters? Will Ferguson and St. Louis be in a state of emergency if Darren Wilson is not indicted? Some are speculating that there may be over $1 billion in property damage. We wonder, will police this time use bioweapons on the protesters? Some are saying there's rumors circulating that white businesses have been told to close their businesses the day of the announcement. On social media site Twitter, someone by the name of The Sailor posted something this week, and it said, all whites should not be part of the protest because, as they put it, shit is going to get real, and we aren't going to care if you're white, you're gone. Now, this is someone on Twitter this week under the hashtag The Sailor. So all things considered, black people are starting to wonder, does black life matter? That's what we're talking about tonight. You know, when we look at the situation in Ferguson, and why does it take 20 people to say Mike Brown was shot execution style, and just one person, Officer Darren Wilson, to say it happened the other way, and it wasn't a situation in which he shot him execution style. In fact, he's saying Mike Brown was charging at him. And with that said, just one person's word over 20 other people's word, or however many witnesses there were, we're just supposed to believe Officer Darren Wilson and the grand jury is not going to indict him? I say no. But I want to hear what you got to say tonight, because listen, y'all, my heart is heavy, as it was and has been for weeks. And I think this particular shooting is going to be the catalyst for so many things. And I think where I'm at tonight is we're almost at the point of no return. And I am hoping and praying that the grand jury in Ferguson does the right thing for everybody. Because as I was telling someone this week, this is a game changer. And I say it's a game changer because at this point, if someone can have their hands up in a surrender position and say don't shoot, and they're still shot by someone who's sworn to protect and serve, then why do people or why are people going to trust the police going forward? And that's across the country, because it's sending a clear message to the world that we got a problem with law enforcement and they don't always tell the truth, and they shoot before they think, and they are macho, and they go out there with an attitude that they are the law instead of the enforcers of the law. But let me get my panel on here tonight before I get started, because I can go in tonight, but I'm going to try not to. I see Christopher on the board. Good evening, Christopher. How are you?
Great, Kheri. How are you doing?
Good. I see AJ. Good evening, AJ. Good evening. How y'all doing?
Yes, I'm saying. Y'all doing all right? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Glad to hear you, AJ.
Listen, y'all see what we're talking about tonight. Any thoughts before these phone lines are already jammed? So I want to know you guys' thoughts before we go in tonight. We're looking for Mary Neal on the board. She's going to be with us on the panel tonight, and the phone lines are jammed. And listen, I'm going to say to anybody else who wants to chime in, get on the phone lines. Call us up at 347-850-8390, then press 1. If you're listening via the Internet, the number is at the top of the screen. Y'all listen, this is a show to ask questions. This is a show to pass on information. This is a show to make comments about this, because we're talking about everything from Mike Brown to Darren Wilson to your DA down there, McCullough. We're talking about the grand jury. We're talking about the Ebola lab being put in St. Louis. We're putting it all out there tonight. We're talking about the protest and the protesters. We're talking about it all, martial law. We're talking about it. So get on the phone lines if you got a question or a comment tonight about what we're talking about Ferguson, the calm before the storm. I'm sorry, but Christopher and AJ, you guys got any comments before we go in tonight?
I do have I guess looking at it, I guess the way I see it is that we have regional problems in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But we have mass media picking out a few things to make, I guess, to make the top of the news, like Ebola in New York and all the other things. So I think that Ferguson is a game changer, but I think what really has to be done is we have to not just let it be Ferguson. It has to be a mass movement in all the cities at the same time. Because Ferguson is an isolated place for a minute, like Watts was, like New York, like Chicago was, But I'm saying there's a whole lot of things that need to be done, but I think we need to do it together, not in the same area, but against the same people.
I agree. Christopher?
I definitely think that AJ is on the right track in terms of what's going on now. If it's not addressed, Ferguson is the catalyst, but if it's not addressed more on a national level, the results of what will happen in Ferguson in terms of Officer Wilson, if he's not indicted, it has grave ramifications and implications, because I think what people have to understand is this is such it's such a way of business that things have been done, and when these types of cases reach the kink in the armor and they actually get the publicity, the national publicity, then people have an opportunity to, in this case and many others, see what actually happens. And some people, even black folks, don't really understand the gravity of incidents like this that happen with police misconduct and police brutality. But I can tell you this, that until people galvanize around this issue, and not just for Mike Brown, yes, for Mike Brown, but for men and women that this has happened to repeatedly over time, and with this type of murderous mentality, until we actually unite and come together so that we can start a movement to stop this across this entire nation, we are going to be in trouble, because this situation will definitely pull the little restraints that are there among police and so forth, to the point that individuals may not even give consideration whatsoever in terms of discretion when lethal force has to be used. So I think people, this is very serious in nature, because it has the potential to basically instill the police state in the minds of police. And then, and through this all, we haven't even heard other police officers that don't agree. I'm not saying that there hasn't been outspoken, that have come out to say in these kind of cases when police officers are wrong, and that seems to be a hard concept for people to understand. When they're wrong, they're wrong. And by default of being a police officer does not get you off the hook. But this is strategically done, because I can tell you, in the back room, Officer Wilson, the police chief, the mayor, the city council, the city board, they're posturing themselves to say, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then, not only that, will it be something that is going to be short-term or long-term? Will black folks, will minorities, will other folks come in and galvanize, and are they going to hold our feet to the fire based on these ordinances, these laws, and statutes, to then want to have more clarity and actually want to have more transparency? So just to suffice it to say that it's so serious, it's even beyond voting. It's not where people think, oh, we just vote somebody in and they'll do what we need them to do as legislation. That's part of it, but it's up to the people at this point. And I have I don't have a very good feeling that they're going to indict him. And even if they did indict him, I don't have a very good feeling that they're really going to do anything other than slap him on the wrist.
Wow. Okay, we're going to go to the phone lines. Area code 202-710. Good evening, you're on Center State.
Good evening. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm well. And this is Mr. Short calling from Washington.
Hey, good evening, Randy Short. How are you?
I'm good. Listening to the show. We're talking about Ferguson, and the last gentleman that was speaking is basically he's got his finger on the pulse of the future. I don't see the man being punished at all. And it's not just been postured. The White House is involved in making certain that Darren Wilson gets off. The Democratic Party having a high turnout in the coming weeks, months, depends on the Obama White House being hard on these young black people. And all of you Obama lovers and supporters, you're not getting anything for your votes or your support. So the president is on Darren Wilson's side. And so we're really at an interesting point, not just white on black, but people who are African Americans that are true, and the blacknecks, the sheep and the goats. And a lot of our organizations and churches and all have sided with the police department, either through silence and inaction, or by basically being silent. Again, silent and inaction. There's been no real thing. Where's Jeremiah Wright? Where are these people? Where are they? And we're not talking about them encouraging anything that's bad that the young people have done, but just the mass killing that's gone on for years. The Congressional Black Caucus, you name it. There's not one single solitary black middle-class group that has come and backed the young people. So the same way did Dr. King. Before he was killed, the same coalition of blacks who have made it, let it be known that Dr. King could be killed and that they would not get involved. So there has been a stand down of black people who've made it the last 50 years, and they have no problem with the mass killing of poor blacks in this country and young black people. And that's just what it is. It's how it is, and it is what it is. And so we're approaching a moment where some of us are going to see, unfortunately, because there's nothing being done to prevent it, some sort of holocaust of young black people. I wish this weren't true, but nothing. Eric Holder, our Attorney General, he is a Barbadian American who does not like black people. He has spent his career destroying black men here in Washington, D.C. and other places. Why not destroy another in Ferguson? Why not? And he's supposed to step down in December, so he has very little to lose. This
I'll back on that. I'm thinking he did recently say that he's going to step down in December. So that does make us wonder, or make me wonder, how that's going to affect the investigation into the murder of Mike Brown. So, do we have reason for concern on that in that area now? Or is that what you're saying, that nothing's going to happen now?
I'm saying nothing's going to happen to Darren Wilson. Nothing's going to happen to Darren Wilson. And if black folk rise up, they're going to use some of those machine guns and tanks on them, and you're going to get support from black people who are established, who are going to say they want law and order. That's exactly where we are. We have some who hate the rest of us, and we have to get real. Just because you got a nice house and cars, whatever, doesn't mean that you're a brother or sister. I'm not saying everyone black who's successful is not a sister or brother. But there's a selfish, narcissistic, only me greed that dominates our black athletes, our so-called successful people. Don't care a damn for the rank and file. If they did, we wouldn't have had so many thousands of our people killed. I mean, this boy is one of many. We can just kick out some figures. Like 80,000 black people die every year for neglectful medical care in this country. 80,000. And we have white folks crying over Vietnam veterans, the last one that died in 75, and they fighting on the battlefields in the 70s. We lose tens of thousands of lives needlessly every year. And in reality, at the core of this is that our lives should matter as much to us, no matter how they go up out of here, than just when it's a policeman's gun that's going off. And we can go on and on about this, but I'm just trying to give you a picture, Sister Hines, that there is a huge segment of the black population that could make a difference that has been on the sidelines this entire time. You haven't seen Glenn Lowry or none of these old civil rights type people saying much anything.
Well, you know what?
Because
let me put you on hold and get some more callers, but I will say this, and just in defense, I myself really, until recently, never thought about activism. I really didn't. Until I started doing this show, I was just another person who would see things and would not react, and I would always think it was somebody else's turn to do it until I started realizing it's my turn. It's my turn. If I want my world to be a better place, I got to get up and do something about it. And I think that's the case that we see in Mike Brown. A lot of people who have never been involved in activism before have now come forward and are doing something because they realize now is the time. And I would say that to anybody that's listening, if you want to know when is the time, is now. But let me go to another phone call. Let's go to 817-730. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Good evening, Kheri. How are you?
Good evening. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. Trying to keep my head up. I'm listening to all this, and it takes me back to Jermaine's death, something that I'm still feel like I'm here in Fort Worth fighting on this all by myself without any help other than from the attorneys and family members.
And explain to them, Angela, your brother, Jermaine Darden, was killed by Fort Worth police. When was that? Was it over a year ago now? Or?
May 16th of 13, Jermaine was killed during a no-knock raid. He was tased to death by the Fort Worth police. And I'm listening I watch the news. As you've seen on my Facebook page, I'm constantly trying to stay on top of this police brutality thing. And just as AJ and everyone has said, I have been saying this since that day, that the communities need to start banding together and speaking out on this injustice, because if we stay silent and we don't speak out on it, they're going to do what they want to do. And no, I don't think that cop is going to get any time, because if we look at what's happened since Jermaine's death or before Jermaine's death, none of these officers that have brutally killed our family members have done any jail time. They get a slap on the wrist, or they get taken off the police force, or they get just a little smug remark made to them, and then they go on about their everyday life. They're not burying or having to come up with the cost to bury a loved one. We are. And it's just heartbreaking. When I saw the people stand up in Ferguson, I cried, because I was like, oh, my God, why is that not happening here? Why is it that Ferguson came out in the forefront and still people here are closing their doors and pulling their blinds shut?
Exactly.
And it's uncalled for. I mean, our forefathers are rolling over in their graves. They fought for our freedom, and we're handing it back to them on a silver platter.
And you know what's weird, though, Angela, is that when I saw Ferguson, I couldn't believe that people that were younger than me had more courage than me to get out there and fight a giant that I've seen for years, knew that it existed, and didn't do anything. And I've seen folks, that are so much younger than me, that are so courageous, and they're willing to put it all on the line. And so it really made me think, what am I saving? I mean, because when you get through, if it's about the house, it's about the car, if it's about the money in the bank, when you get through, it's going to all be over in a minute anyway, y'all. And so when you get through, if you don't have any freedom anymore, you're a slave.
I mean, people that think that, just like the man said, okay, how many fur coats, how many diamond rings, how many watches, how many vehicles, how big your house is, how big your salary is. If you don't stand up for what's right, you are nothing. You have nothing.
But see, we're forgetting we're all on the pecking order. And so today, it may be, the dope dealer, and tomorrow, it may be, someone else, and then eventually they're going to come up the rung until they get you. And so
Kheri,
we got to. Go ahead.
But think about who's the biggest dope dealer in the United States or anywhere. It's the government. We don't own shipping rights. We don't own the ability to bring that in from other countries. Mm-hmm. And if people are turning a blind eye thinking that the police are just impounding all this, think again, because they're the ones putting it right back out on the street.
But let me ask you a question, and I got to get some more of these calls. You being a family member who saw your brother killed by police and nothing happened, where are we headed when we see the situation with Mike Brown and his family possibly, getting the same news that the officer's not going to be indicted? What does that do to you when you know someone took your family member's life and they're not going to get any jail time for it, they're not going to even lose their job? How does that feel to a family member who lost a loved one?
It breaks my heart, but then I want Mike Brown's family, the people that are in Ferguson that are fighting for not just Ferguson's rights, but for all of our rights, to not give up, to not stop fighting, keep it out there, keep it open. A young man posted a song on Facebook. It was called Call the Police. This is what happens when you call the police. And when that video first comes on, the first thing I saw was Jermaine's house, and the police going in Jermaine's house. That's the first video clip he used. And I had to thank him from the bottom of my heart for my family. My family has been through ups and downs. Dad was just diagnosed with renal cancer, and on top of all the other stress that we're going through, we're still going through it because of this. I mean, I don't want Jermaine's death to go in vain. I don't want to gain any kind of monetary income from his death. I want justice. I want our people, our kids, our children's children, to be able to walk with their heads up high. Before you put me off, I rode around for 4 months with hands up, don't shoot, on the back of my car window. My car was scratched up because of that. I had the sheriff's department follow me, taking pictures of me in my car, taking pictures of my car, and I did not once did that deter me from standing up for what's right. And right now I'm trying to think of a new slogan to put on the back of my car window because, like I told you, if I'm not breaking the law, you can't touch me.
And with Stefan, let me take some more calls. Hold on. I'm going to try to go to 203-443, then I'm going to 314-853. 203-443, good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Hi, this is Gwen Samuel. How are you?
Fine, Gwen Samuel. How are you?
All right, just listening in and, listening to our discussion of Ferguson and what needs to happen. And one thing I just don't see is we're all over the place, right? It just feels that we have pockets of people doing things in Missouri, pockets of people doing things in Connecticut. And I agree with one of the young brothers on the phone, right? There is no cohesiveness. The people, we still haven't gotten it. Right? So the Fergusons will not stop. I agree. Whatever happens to Darren, I don't think he'll be charged. And if he does, it'll be such a slap on the wrist that they were better off still convening a grand jury than let that come out and hit the public. And we just don't have a plan, right? A plan. We don't shut things down. We don't boycott. No. People think they're past the days of boycotting, right? I've been getting calls. I've been working with a young man, actually a few young people at the Shawn High School in St. Louis, Missouri. They did a walkout about a month or so ago, I think, not too long ago. And they've been organizing because they have injustices in the school. You know, superintendent.
Let me jump in there, Gwen. Gwen just made an excellent point. What is the plan for all of us who want to help, who can't come to St. Louis, who can't get in on the Ferguson March? What is it that the protesters are asking the rest of us to do? I saw Occupy Wall Street was so organized and so put together. If y'all are asking for donations, if y'all are asking for sleeping bags, if y'all are asking for pillows, whatever it is that you all are asking for, you all need to put it out there so the rest of us can answer the call, because everybody's not going to be able to leave their lives and come and help in terms of the protest, but we can help in other ways. Would you agree with that, Gwen?
Right, and it needs to be things that will run parallel, right? So while you're asking for the water and the boycotts, the question is, what are we going to do legally, right? If there are laws in place, how do you prevent this? How are we going to address police brutality, right? Again, we're all over the place. And so I think whatever action steps or whatever the ask will be, there probably will be 2 or 3 things running along. That's why we need people that are willing to take the lead on something. And, you know, I'm willing to do my part. I mean, they asked me, can I organize in Ferguson? So I called, in the town in St. Louis. I said, I'm not down there, but let's see who we can connect with down there, right? We have the relationships. We know what to do. I believe we know what to do. It's just, you know, just needing that spark or some guidance on how to do it. We know we have to do something. We know we can no longer sit on the sidelines. They're killing our babies. And even on the Facebook today, Kheri, how you put that video about that shooting in 1998 where a cop pulled over that a truck and this white guy came out acting a fool. Walked above the cop shaking and stop, don't stop. The guy got all in his face, went in his truck and got a gun and executed that officer. You understand? We don't get that luxury. We look suspicious. This man was acting crazy. And we get shot because we happen to be the wrong color. That's the only thing we are guilty of in their sight is being born black. And until we make a statement that we're going to have to change some mindsets, and that's going to be a collective action. But I mean that serious stuff. It's great we have these radio shows and we talk, but that's all they expect us to do, you know. They're saying all they're going to do is talk and march, take some photos. They don't ask us for nothing. They don't demand nothing, and they doggone don't shut nothing down. So if we do those things, we'll keep on not taking them seriously. So the folk in Ferguson are not taking us seriously. The folk in the lawmakers are not taking us seriously. The marching, the shooting, they're not taking us seriously because we move in moments, and then we go back to business as usual.
Yo, let me pick up 314-853. Good evening. You're on 314-853. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
How you doing, Ms. Hines?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing pretty. This is Priz.
Hi, Priz.
First thing, let me say this. If anybody listening, I wish they would go to YouTube and put in The Truth as I See It. Run it all together. The Truth as I See It. But use the letter C and then IT. I just want people to check that out. But going back to what's happening here in St. Louis, let me ask you a question. If you shoot a dog and that dog falls, shoot him one time and shoot him 13 more times, what do you think would happen to you?
They put me away like they did my bitch.
They would have you in jail in a minute. So what I'm saying, they care more for animals than they do a black person.
Amen.
And when you, now let me tell you something. I know you might not want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you. When they start sending the priest to jail for raping these children, that's when things will change. Why? And I know the Pope have heard about all the brutality that the police is doing to people. You think that Pope going to, this is a conspiracy. The Pope is not going to say anything about this because he don't want to lose his way. So this thing is going to continue to go on. When I looked at that shooting that they had in Washington, in Washington, D.C. at that high school today, and that killed about 2 or 3 people there. Did you hear about that?
I did.
Yeah. And by them...
If there had been a black kid that did that, he would have been a thug. But this kid, he's a good kid. Nothing.
Yeah. And you know, the first thing I heard them say that those children have to have therapy. Who gave black people any kind of therapy during slavery? I like to ask the psychiatrist what would happen if they didn't give these white kids any kind of therapy. What would happen to them? And then I would like to ask you, huh?
Go ahead. Ask your final question. Go ahead.
And then I would like to ask them what happened to black people when they didn't get any kind of therapy. White folks invented when you teach your children to hate, bullying. They invented that word bullying. Can you imagine somebody spitting in your face and you can't do anything about it? If you did, you would die.
But you know what? Let me say this, caller, and I'm going to move on. You know what I know? I know the tables have turned. And I know in protest today you can't spit in somebody's face and get away with it. I know today you can't walk up to somebody and hit them and think you're not going to get hit back. So I think it's a different protest today. By all indicators, it's not going to be that kind of protest, and black folks ain't going to do that no more. So I'm here to tell you, if I'm ever on the protest line, you can't spit in my face and you can't hit me and you can't intimidate me. So just put it out there.
It all depends on what color. They will defend. It's just like they defending this policeman. They going to do the same thing with you. It don't make no difference. They're not going to change. And I kept telling...
I'm going to respond to that, and I'm going to move on. I think the difference today...
let me say this. And I told people they're going to be sorry they voted for Obama.
Oh, wow.
They're going to be sorry.
We're going to pick up 770-879. Good evening. You're on Interface. 770-879.
Good evening, Kheri. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Wonderful. This is Mary Neal. I've enjoyed the callers tonight. I want the young woman from Texas who called about her brother's taser death to know that I'm aware of his taser death, and I try to bring attention to it and let other people know that, yes, Mike Brown was wrongfully assassinated by Officer Wilson, but during that same period, I counted 14 other murders by police where people were wrongly killed, and her brother is included in that number. And my name is Mary Neal. I'm director of assistance to the incarcerated mentally ill and also Human Rights for Prisoners March. And I invite any of your callers who've lived through a wrongful death of a family member to get in touch with me so that we can get together and help publicize their wrongful deaths. We have a tendency to go where we're directed. For instance, when Trayvon Martin was killed, there were so many young men, young black men, who were killed around that same period. But somebody pointed our noses at Trayvon Martin, and that became the rally cry, Trayvon Martin. But the situation is that every year we have hundreds and hundreds of people, not all of them black, but mostly black, also Latinos, Native Americans, and some whites, particularly whites who are mentally ill or who are perceived to be poor or on drugs or alcohol, are killed wrongly by police. And we have a tendency to focus on one or two murders when in reality people are getting murdered every day. I read yesterday and posted about a young man, 17 years old, who was shot to death by police in, I believe it was, I'm not sure, but I believe it was Chicago. And he was shot to death for having a crazed look in his eye. That's why the police said he shot him and killed him because he supposedly turned toward them, walking slowly with a small knife, and had a crazed look in his eye. So the situation is that they think they can kill any damn body they want, especially if they throw in there the word crazy or mentally ill, and then we will go for it. Or if they got no other excuse for it, they'll say it's drug-related. They do these home invasions. Right now we have a young black man who's in prison, and they have him up on murder one charges because he heard people invading his home, and he shot. And he shot. And it turned out that it was police doing that home invasion. They called it a no-knock warrant. He happened to shoot first, and he killed police officer. And he's in jail for murder one. He's on death row. So when the situation is turned around and the homeowner gets to his gun first and shoots police who are invading their home, haven't announced themselves as police, did not knock on the door, didn't call and say we're sending police officers, didn't do anything or give any consideration whatsoever, and they get shot, then the homeowner is on death row. Trying to get a murder one conviction and trying to execute the man for simply protecting his home from people that he had no way of knowing were police officers. And then, like I said, you have the young woman today who's on your show whose brother was tasered to death when police came into his home on a no-knock warrant. I told you just now about a 17-year-old who was a black young man, and he was killed by police because supposedly he had a crazed look in his eye. I want to also let you know that in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a police officer was fired for instigating a fight with a homeless man in the park, and the homeless man was awakened by this police officer. He was asleep there, and the police officer instigated a confrontation with the man, and I don't even know if the man retaliated or not, but of course they would say he did. Anyway, this police officer shot this homeless man who was asleep in the park 14 times, just like the man who just got through talking. That is overkill. So every day they're killing us. It's not just Mike Brown. They've killed so many black people since Mike Brown, and not just black people, but also Caucasians and anyone who's considered less than. Anyone who's considered poor.
But we got to change the law, though. That's one of the first agendas we need to realize. We got to change the law in terms of what is acceptable in terms of police responses to these situations and what's not acceptable. Because when you get through, it's too often that the black officers show restraint when they show up at a scene, and the white officers fail to show up and show restraint. So something's wrong with that. Let's go to area code 314-381. Good evening. You're on center stage. 314-381.
Hello, Kheri.
How are you?
I was listening to your conversation. You say hello to prison. But I was going to ask the question. Now, the lady that with the Indiana incident, not the Indiana, but where her brother was tased to death, that is a very sad commentary. But Indiana has a law that if police enter your house under the assumption of no knock, you have a right to kill them and nothing happens to you. I think Ohio may have the same thing. And that's what should be worked for in the state that you're in. The thing about it ain't right, that's not what applies. It's the law. When they convene a grand jury is listening to testimony, shown evidence, then they're asked, then they're exposed to the law. Then they're asked, did the person, the police officer, or did a concealed carry act outside the bounds of the law? And of course, if they didn't, then the person is exonerated. So as Kheri said, and I have made these recommendations, you need to change the law. The law as it applies to the definition of deadly force. You can't expect people going to do right, because they don't have to do right. But they do have to work within the bounds of the law. And if they go outside of those constraints, then that's when you have them. Another point, these body cameras are excellent. Anytime the police come into confrontation with a citizen, that body camera should be operating. That way, not only does it protect the person they come in contact with, but it also protects them too. That way they don't have to lie. It's right there on camera.
But don't we need to change the law starting in Missouri, though? Because isn't Missouri that basically, and most people feel like this is unconstitutional, but it allows police to use deadly force against anyone, even if there's no imminent threat or harm? Is that on your book?
That law is across the country. That law is not across the country, but it varies from state to state, really. So each state should work to change there, or it should be a national law that applies to the use of deadly force. Each state should have it, whereas if people enter your house illegally, then you have a right to shoot them, just like you do anybody else. I think that a person, a common citizen, has the right to protect themselves when they fear for their life, just like the police use the excuse all the time. So if you got police coming down on you with guns drawn, and you got a concealed carry, you got a right to pull your gun and say, wait, what's going on here? Just like they do.
I'm wondering if Darren Wilson used this excuse, and this is a Missouri law, y'all. It says that a police officer may use deadly force in effecting an arrest or in preventing an escape from custody when the officer reasonably believes that such use of deadly force is immediately necessary to effect the arrest, and also reasonably believes that the person to be arrested has committed and attempted to commit a felony. Well, we know that Officer Darren Wilson is basically grafting his testimony around what's come out so far. And allegedly, per all these leaks that are coming from the grand jury, he is saying that he was responding to a robbery. Well, I listened to the police traffic for that day, and Officer Darren Wilson never heard a police radio call for a robbery because it didn't go out over the radio during that time period. That's for sure. So we know that part is a lie. So is he trying to graft testimony to meet this particular statute in the law to cover himself?
Sure he is. And Kheri, and the other thing about that, even when they did the autopsy, what a lot of people don't know is when they recovered the clothing items.
Whoever has a noise in the background, please mute your phone, or I'm going to have to mute all the lines. Okay, go ahead.
Basically, the first thing I was just going to briefly speak on is that Michael Brown apparently had flip-flops on. So it was not, it doesn't take rocket scientists that if he was basically trying to run away in flip-flops, it probably wasn't happening, and according to the witnesses, that's not the way it went down. But the other thing I wanted to say in terms of where we need to start in terms of galvanizing, in terms of uniting our efforts, the laws are very important. But even before we look at the laws, I believe in the words of what Dick Gregory said. A lot of us have gone to sleep and we're sleepwalking because we have become that we think that education and money and success and a nice house and a car equals liberation.
All right.
I realize that we are not liberated
Yeah. All the other stuff is minutia, because once you realize you're not liberated, and then you're willing to step into that atmosphere that you're not liberated, and that you're going to basically be committed to doing what it takes to be liberated, i.e. laws, i.e. voting, and so forth, then I think you can galvanize, you can get a plan in your city, you can get a plan that will work for your community, and you can also unite with other people. But I think too many people are mixing the pot, fooling around with people that don't realize that they're not liberated, because they think their education has liberated them. But if that was the case, we still wouldn't be getting arrested, the police brutality and so forth. So I just basically want to say, until we realize what liberation is, and that we're not yet liberated, and that we're willing to step on that plank of liberation and fight it until the end, then I think everything else that's said will work.
I agree. Good evening. If you just tuned in, you come center stage tonight for the topic Ferguson, the calm before the storm. We're talking about the topic Ferguson, the calm before the storm. We're talking about basically everything from the protesters' safety. We're talking about the fact that Officer Darren Wilson may not be indicted. We're talking about the grand jury, Mike Brown, Darren Wilson. We're talking about martial law possibly being imposed if a protest erupts after the announcement of someone has noise in their background. I'm going to ask whoever has the noise in their background to please mute it. Whoever...
You know another thing too, Terry.
Okay. Well, hold on, PRC. Whoever has the noise in their background, we're going to have to ask you to mute it. Okay, I'm going to have to go down the line and mute everybody's phone at the same time then in order to figure out who has the noise. Okay. Okay, what I'm going to do right now, though, I'm going to play a video before you say what you're going to say, Bianchi, because this is a very crucial testimony, and Mary's going to tell you all a little bit about what happened when I posted it today or the other day on her page. But this particular video went on YouTube, I think, a day after Mike Brown died. And this person has been, in my opinion, the most accurate on the account of what happened that day. And so I think if you listen, okay, whoever has the noise in their background, I'm going to ask you one more time to please mute your phone. Okay. So I'm going to play this video, and I want you all to listen to this young man's account. And you all tell me, why has this young man never been seen on any of the news outlets? And what is it? Okay, someone still has noise. What I'm going to do, I apologize, you all. I'm going to have to go down the line and mute everybody's phone line because somebody's got noise in their background. I can't tell who it is. So what I'm going to ask you to do is if you want to make a comment from here forward, just kind of push one on and push one off on your phone, and that will let me see that you want to make a comment because otherwise I cannot talk over whoever has the noise in their background, and I'm just not sure who it is. Okay. Okay, I'm going to play this video now, and you all listen to this young man's account. Okay. You all listen to this young man's account of what he says happened the day that Mike Brown died. And it's going to be very telling as to where we are today moving forward and whether or not Officer Wilson should be indicted or shouldn't be indicted. Okay, so give me 1 second, and we're going to play that video. But this young man has never been identified. He's never been on CNN, ABC, NBC, which is very interesting because how can he know all of these things, but yet no one has contacted him? That's very suspect. So listen to this young man's account, and you all tell me if something is wrong with why this person has never been brought forward. Here we go.
I need to open, dog. What the fuck? And then he kicked the door open, trying to get on the door. Door moved back in the leg, bro. He shot 40 gun out, shot inside the car, trying to get him down the car. Bro, dude on the seat like, bro, don't shoot. Bro, don't shoot. Dude, he shot him dead in the head, bro. Then he walked up to his body, shot him almost nigga walking out home, bro. Nigga walk all the way down the walk around there. No police came enough, bro. Well, no police put for him enough. This nigga walk home. Walk home, bro. This nigga was down there home. Police want to come over behind him and come up on him. Get out the street. He was dead from up all day, bro. He was like, we got to go there, I was out there naked. He get reversed just like him, bro. That's what it came for me after, bro. He walked out of the post. The first thing Mark Green called the police of saying nobody saw the shit. Police niggas want to do shit, bro. He saw a bad dude, this nigga. I put her down 6 folks, bro. He like, oh, fuck you, I ain't gonna fight him. Yeah, bro, suicide type shit. My nigga was already on his knees, like, bro, you don't think I'm shooting y'all already in the woods? Bro, come on, man, what kind of shit is this? Most of us laying on the ride because, yeah, look black dude got shit like that. It ain't no shit like that. It's more than it. Why you fucking white messages to who shit? Y'all ain't get no call. Then Ferguson came. Ferguson, well, Thomas came, they made Ferguson rich, bro. They said, oh, I'm talking about this case and everything, brother. Everybody, videos, talking about cameras, everything got all the things. They shoot everything out there. Whole Brooklyn. There's towers out there, bro. They came, they want everybody on those doors and they seen that this thing whole story. They not on the doors. They walk clean in like they know it. And they saw everything. They video posts, on anything, bro. Text video on anything, bro. They trying to make this problem. Because, bro, doing ain't no shit. Doing the good shit, the good ass shit, bro. Short shit, bro. Most expensive head, I'm talking about, he's not going to do it, bro. He's not going to do it, bro. On some real shit. He is not going to do it. He'll step back. You know what I'm saying? Find your door so you can have a good face. Yeah, I'm real shit. Don't respect my nigga, bro. That's why I'm like, I don't know where it's coming from. Like, thinking like, look, getting down on this, you know what I'm saying? Anywhere. It could happen anybody. Anybody walking down the street, folks got to walk. Something they walk on the wrong side of the bed. Oh, shit, bro. I just was supposed to see you got out there shooting every motherfucking person, bro. On my mom. It ain't disturbing. It ain't drunk. It ain't good with this shit. They something. I'm talking about nigga, everybody got out there hooked up guns, bro. All the time, bro. All of them, bro. And all of them just setting up their guns out. Then you only like 3 or 4 can bring around the corner with guns. And you don't want to know what? You want to know why? Don't fucking man it out. Because for one, they went around the corner and just find shit. No guns, no nigga, no nothing. Motherfuckers that don't put the shit on us like that. They ain't find shit. They ain't find shit, bro. They got dogs out here. They did, bro. They had dogs out here. Everybody, bro. We didn't do shit. And nobody got no guns, no nothing. But you want to bring out dogs and M16s and AR-15s and all this big shit. Oh, man, we can get like that, too. I mean,
Okay, that's the end of the video. It's 4 minutes and 34 seconds. It's on YouTube, and it's under Eyewitness Speaks on the Murder of Mike Brown. That video has been out there since about a day or so after Mike Brown died. That young man, whoever he is, has never been identified, has never been on any media outlets whatsoever. Now, I find it very suspect that he knew so much about what happened from the point of the store all the way forward, but nobody has ever asked him what happened. Does that sound suspect to anybody but me? Is something wrong with that story?
Kheri, that is the way that it remember I was talking about the everyday how that happens. And they will suppress information, they will suppress witnesses because they only want to hear from those people who are basically going to paint the light in the realm or for the officer or the city. 6 years ago, and let me just, because this is, so people understand that it happens. It happened to me. My case, the incident, 2 female officers arrived at my home within 4 minutes of me making that 911 call when they allegedly said that I assaulted my aunt. Within 4 minutes, they were at my house. They came in, they evaluated everything. They saw that there was no way that I could have possibly harmed her according to her complaint. They left. 5 weeks later, I got arrested by a different police officer in a different precinct.
Even when he arrested me, I said, "Officer, are you aware that 2 police officers came to my home from District 22, didn't even do a police report, didn't do an incident report, and cautioned my aunt about cursing in front of the kids?" You know what he said? "It's not my issue. I don't have to investigate that." I knew I was in trouble at that. So these things happen all the time. And it feels like this man was a first-hand eyewitness, and he gave an eyewitness account. They don't want to hear from him.
Well, that's not true. This kid has been sequestered for his own safety. So, yes, you're not hearing no more from him. It's good.
Are you sure?
Yes.
That particular eyewitness.
He's been sequestered for his own safety.
Okay. Now go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Who's that?
It's Angela.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
The young man, I was listening to the tape and the recording, and it takes me back to the audio video that I have of Jermaine's death. And you listen to everything that's being said during the raid, everything that's being said after the raid. You hear the police officers in their statements, you know, as if we're all covering for each other. You hear every one of the witnesses making statements that Jermaine was dead when he left that house. I've talked to each one of them myself, and they saying that no one had their Miranda rights read to them before they got thrown into the little rooms and said, "Okay, tell us what you know." The whole time you're hearing officers make comments. I told you we were going to have a good baseball game today. We hit this one out of the park. You know, this led to me to believe that they intended on killing Jermaine from Jump Street. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't oops, look what we did type of thing. This was, we gonna do this, and this is what's gonna happen. I heard Mary Neal, I think that's her name. I would love for her to contact me and call me. Because I hear everybody.
Give her your information.
I have no problem. I have no problem doing it on the air because, like I said, I have nothing to hide. People can call me all day long. As long as they're willing to help me fight this injustice, call me. My name is Angela Lynn Tyson. My number is 817-730-8741. I hear people say, get the laws changed, but I don't never hear anybody say how to get this law changed.
You know what I was saying, Angela?
Well, I'll tell you how to get the laws changed.
You know what I say, Angela? When other groups have an issue, the first thing they're going to do is find them an attorney. First of all, and I think they have to put the money up to make things like that happen. And I think then things start moving forward. But I think if you just have a whole bunch of people who have, or just lay people who have no knowledge on how to do it, that law will never get changed. But I think if you get the right money.
I mean, where's the money coming from? It's not like I can pull a rabbit out of my hat. I mean, I understand what you're saying. But then again, when it seems like I'm the only one in Fort Worth fighting for this injustice, I'm out here by myself, people. I'm out here putting slogans on my car to get the public awareness of what's going on in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
I ain't got no help.
Okay, something's wrong with your phone too, Angela. This is the thing. That's why everybody, in my opinion, should come together on this Mike Brown issue, because Mike Brown is all of us. I mean, because when you get through, if Mike Brown can have his hands up in a surrender position and still be shot in the head, then the rest of us can have our hands in the surrender position. So getting the laws changed wouldn't just be about Mike Brown. Getting the laws changed would be about everybody. And I think the law then should be changed from state to state to state. So that's my theory on that. In terms of getting the laws together, I think we all have to come together, put our money where our mouth is, and find some lobbyists who can make that happen, and find attorneys who can work with us and move forward on an issue like that. I think it's that simple.
Well, the attorneys would be like the American Bar Association. That would be a good place to go for attorney. The American Bar Association is already an organization that's designed to handle things on that particular level. Law is changed at state level, which is state legislation. Some state, and it has to be. This has to be a plan. It just can't be what we're going to. Well, it has to be changed so that it's workable, and so that it's quote unquote fair.
Right.
The laws are the way they are because of court decisions. Virginia, Tennessee versus somebody, and another one in Virginia is court decision that allowed them to. Somebody already challenged them, and court said it was okay. But court decisions can be changed. Court decisions change based on the opinion of the people. If people say that this is wrong, just like a juror, when a juror is in court, a juror not only does he judge the facts, but he also had the opportunity to judge the law. Is the law a wrong law? Is it a good law or what? Some other things need to be done. Like these trainers, any training program for police officers should be subject to the ridicule of the community. Amen. You would not put a curriculum in a public school without it being overviewed to see exactly what's being taught, what's being said, so on and so on. So the same should be done with a training session that police officers must undergo. You want to make sure that the training session isn't biased. You want to make sure that the training session isn't designed in order to spur up some unfounded hype into these police officers. You want to make just the equipment they use. They shouldn't have mannequins that resemble black men. And we have seen that before. Mannequins should be neutral. Shouldn't resemble white men, shouldn't resemble Asians, shouldn't resemble black men.
Well, not just the training. Before they hire these officers, they need to do a thorough background. Did these men or women have any kind of mental illness that runs in their family? Did they have problems, anger problems growing up as a child in school or out of school? Those things need to be looked at as well.
Well, can I say this? In my opinion, before they change these laws, these racist laws, I think that this country will go down before they do something like that. This is not. It wouldn't be America if you didn't have the racism and discrimination here.
Well, President, unfortunately, everybody don't think like you. You know yourself that laws can be changed.
This is just my opinion. Now I'm just saying in my opinion. But this thing, it just like I mentioned about the Pope. The Pope know what's going on here. The Pope got millions and millions of people behind him. You think the Pope will speak out on something like this? The Pope know that this.
Let me ask you something. Colin, is your name Chris? Is that what it is? Is it Chris?
Prius.
Okay. Prius, let me say something. Every week. And I don't know how old you are, but you sound like you're just a little older than me. Prince, it seems like to me you have a mindset that's set back in back before before I got here. And it seems like you are conditioned to believe that nothing can change. You seem like you believe that they're always going to have their foot on our necks and that we're not going to move forward because that's just the way it's going to be. I beg to differ with you. I don't know if you're a Christian
look, Miss Hines, I respect you, but you got to respect my opinion. I didn't say that it would. That's just my opinion. I respect your opinion. Can't you respect mine? I notice every time I talk about the Pope, you want to get rid of me.
No. You know what? No. Listen. Frankly, can I be honest with you? I don't give a care about the Pope. I'm not Catholic. I mean,
that's just my. I'm just giving you my opinion about this. This stuff been going on. I don't care. You know what? Nothing in my life, in my opinion, is affected by the Pope because I'm not Catholic. I don't tune into anything that he says because to me he doesn't govern me. And so when you get through, as far as the Pope speaking out on Ferguson, I don't care if he doesn't. I think it's up to us to speak out on Ferguson because, you know what, somebody that looks like us was affected by what happened in Ferguson. I think that's the problem that I hear too often. Wait. You got let me finish. No. Please let me finish.
All right, come on now. We don't have to have these arguments back and forth. We're trying to disseminate some information. Now, let me mention a couple more things.
Well,
another thing that needs to be done, there needs to be a national registry, registry for police officers who have been reprimanded, who have violated somebody's civil rights through abuse, aggrieved some U.S. citizen. Their name should go in that national registry so that if they go to another municipality, that municipality has a right to know who they are getting involved in.
Exactly.
They have a right to know. Another point, in these small towns like Ferguson, that's 60, 70, 70% black, the public service jobs should reflect the population that they are servicing. There's no reason at all, except for the good old boy system, that Ferguson police is about 90% white. If you let that continue to go on in your community, then you have to ask yourself, why is this? And see, here's the point. The question is not that black police officers won't shoot you. We're talking about economics now. We want those dollars that the public is paying for to stay in their community. It don't make any sense for firefighters, public works, city hall, the school district, and the police department to have people who come from 25, 30, or 40 miles to come into that community and take out those dollars and plus the pensions.
How do you demand change then? How do you demand change in those areas?
You have you put a program in place that trains and prepares black applicants, and you have a separate entity that contains those applicants' names and qualifications. And it's mandatory that when the police department wants to hire, the fire department wants to hire, City Hall, they have to go to this entity. They cannot get on the phone and use the good old boy system. That program worked in the construction industry in St. Louis with an organization called MOCAN. It worked very well.
Do you realize how many mentally ill black people are? How many black people are mentally ill behind all of this stuff that's going on? We all need therapy. Maybe Miss Hines, you might not need it.
Mr. Fred, let me
trust in Jesus. You got a point, but Mr. Fred, let me say this, and I hear you say this every time you call in. You gotta stop waiting for somebody to save us. They ain't coming. They're not. Nobody is coming to save Black America. And we don't come together and unite, we will go down as one.
Well, you can't go nowhere. You can't go nowhere if you're mentally ill.
Kheri, let me ask Mr. Prince something. Mr. Prince, let me ask you something. You're saying that it's up to the Pope. Okay, I didn't say it was up. Okay, let me finish. I listened to everything you said without interruption. I gave you that respect. So could you give me some?
Yes,
what I'm saying is, you're saying that the Pope knows everything that's going on. Well, the president knows, the governments know, the mayors know, the all the churches in America and out of America, they know. But you're sitting up here saying, and I'm listening to you, and you sound like you're around my dad's age, and that you've seen and been through some things. And I would hope that what you grew up and overcame to the point that you are still standing here able to speak today would be the same lessons that you were trying to teach to us as younger Black Americans, is to stand up and fight. I'm not going to let my brother's death go in vain because one person feels like I'm supposed to lay down and take this. I cannot do that. That's not in my heart. That's not how I was raised. And I know as a God-loving Christian, he didn't put me here for me to sit down and keep my mouth shut and not do anything to help others. And that's what my fight is about.
And I don't think none of these boys that the police is killing think that way either. They didn't think that way. Brown didn't think that way, but look what happened to him.
When my brother was snatched up and killed, before he walked in that door, my brother was asleep. He had no knowledge that they were coming through that door until they startled him out of his dead sleep. Now he's sleeping permanently, and he shouldn't be there. Mr. Brown shouldn't be there. None of these young men or women that have been murdered in this fashion by the police, by people that have been governed to protect and serve the public, and that means us too. Their death shouldn't be in vain like this.
You don't
and
think
shame on you for suggesting that they should.
I agree with you, lady. The death shouldn't be in vain. But, the gentleman, the young man that was on earlier asked where all the blacks that's got the money and stuff. Well, some of them is trying to tell you what needs to be done. From years and experience of watching this for 4 decades, some of us are trying to tell you what needs to be done.
All I need is a mentor, sir, to somebody that can take me by the hand and say, Ms. Tyson, this is what you have to do, and I guarantee you, I will get it done. You need to lead. It would be nice if yourself and some other people. I don't know what state you are. You need a law like they got in. They need a law. Now Texas is a hard cookie to crack, but they need a law like they have in Indiana.
I'm gonna say this.
Come on now.
Get off of here.
Go ahead and say what you're gonna say.
I'm gonna say this, and I'll get the hell off of here.
Go ahead.
Until black people start teaching their children, and staying with their children and teaching them some knowledge, this thing will. You cannot do a damn thing ignorant. You can't fight nobody ignorant.
Is that all you got to say? Go ahead.
And that's our weapon. Our weapon is knowledge. That's why we keep losing this war, because we don't have the knowledge. Yeah, I mean, if you look at how these kids are coming up today, what can you say about that?
All right, we all know that now, so go ahead. You said you were leaving. You're wasting these people's time.
You want me to get off, because I know what you did to me once before.
I'll see you later on.
Yeah, go there.
Hey, can I say something before you go?
I'm
going to say something before we go.
No, we're going to go to 770-807. Then we got to pick up this caller. 770-807. Good evening, you're on Super.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, ma'am. How are you? Good evening, Pianki.
I'm doing
Hello, Sarge.
Well.
How you doing?
Who called me auntie?
Look, I
770-807.
Yes, that's me. You can call me Sarge. I'd just like to say that I'm looking at the description of your show notes about Mike Brown's autopsy report and Darren Wilson's account of what happened, and what you're saying, some on social media sites are saying, and that they believe Officer Wilson will not be indicted, and what is the reason for these leaks that are occurring, and attempts to assassinate Mike Brown, Kheri, and justify Officer Wilson's actions, and so forth and so on. Well, I would submit to you that the autopsy report, and remember, there were 2 of them that were performed, one by the medical examiner hired by Mike Brown's family, and the one done by the St. Louis medical examiner, and the 6 black eyewitnesses that, according to the Washington Post and the leaked testimony, came forth to essentially corroborate Officer Wilson's story. And all of these things taken together, perhaps there will be no evidence to indict Officer Wilson. Now, what should we make of that? Just indict him anyway?
Okay.
Well, let me tell you something, Sarge. Let me ask you this. Let me mention this,
you're not paying attention.
Kheri.
That sounds like to me you're not paying attention.
Let me say this, Kheri. It's funny that... Well, wait, hang on for a second. It's funny that Officer Wilson have an opportunity.
Officer Wilson has an opportunity. By calling me auntie. That is an old white term for black women, auntie and nanny. You get off this phone, you darn white racist supremacist. Don't ever call me auntie.
I think you ought to tell her, inform her.
Whatsoever.
Well, you should show some. I try to show respect to everybody if I possibly can. But the thing I was getting ready to say is that Officer Wilson had an opportunity to look at all the evidence that was brought forth before he came and done his testimony. So sure, he would tailor his testimony so that it would collaborate with what he already knew other people had said. And of course, there are collaborations that haven't been brought forth yet. Like Terry gave the testimony of the young man who, by the way, is in hiding, or should I say, is sequestered for his own safety.
Mm-hmm. Well, Pianki, you got to remember, people keep using terms like verdict. A grand jury does not issue a verdict. They issue either a true bill of indictment or they don't. They cannot issue a verdict because it is not their duty to determine guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what a jury does at a trial. A grand jury proceeding is not a trial. It is to determine whether or not probable cause exists to bring forth a charge to bring an individual before trial. And people keep using these terms as though they're interchangeable.
Well, some people don't understand the laws like other people do.
Let me say this. The problem with the grand jury is you have people that are in office that don't care one way or the other what's going on. Now, if you want to, if you want to sit up and let it be true bill or no bill, let the public choose people out of the public like they do with a jury. Let them hear the evidence. Let them.
That's what they're doing. 24 people.
No, they're not.
No,
they're not. Because here in Texas, every officer that has been killing people, and we know that they are wrong, and the public knows that they are wrong, are being no bill.
Ma'am, grand jurors are not some sort of select people that are an elite. They are members of the jury pool selected from the public at large.
I can tell you from experience and having to fight a wrongly arrest and criminal case here in Chicago, what you're saying against, yes, they don't. They just basically grant the indictment. But let us not think that they're also, because the grand jury is usually an arm or the wing of the state's attorney's office. So
exactly. Well, no, it isn't. I mean, you pick 24 people from a jury pool. They're not employees of the state's attorney's office.
Sir, listen to what I'm saying.
You don't know who they are. You don't know
yes, I do.
What I'm saying.
I testified before grand juries. I had to testify.
Yeah, but every state's different, so
one at a time.
Sir.
Wait, one at a time.
Kheri, this is what I'm going to say that he is not saying. It's foolish to believe that the grand jury is going to look upon a police officer in the same light that they're going to look on a citizen.
Thank you.
Ma'am, have you polled the grand jurors? Do you know that?
And that equality is there. I'm not talking about the grand jury. What I'm talking about is that when you have an officer that is alleged to have murdered an individual, or if you had a citizen that was alleged to have murdered an officer, I can tell you that it would be skewed because most of what happens in the criminal proceedings is usually on the behalf or the positive nature of the police officer. So
now I'm gonna let me ask you a question now. If you believe that, okay, I get it. Yeah, I understand what you believe.
I'm dealing with that case.
I understand what you believe. I understand what you believe, and I understand what you believe. Now, let me ask you a question.
She says she's dealing with a case like that in Chicago.
Yeah, like I don't know Chicago. Okay, look.
And you know, you was in Illinois, right?
Yeah, I was a police officer in the state of Illinois, a state policeman. I worked in Cook County and Chicago. I know the grand jury system, ma'am. I know the state attorney.
I know the grand jury too.
Okay, well, wait.
All right, now we both got that clear. Let's go ahead on.
All right, now, let me tell you what the Constitution of the United States says. I know you don't care about that either, probably, but let's tell me what it says.
No, she didn't say that, but go ahead.
No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Now, they went to the grand jury. What do you want them to do?
Okay, can I help you here? Let me jump in, and I'll let everybody talk. First of all, it sounds like all the news you've heard or paid attention to, SARS, has been on the positive side for Darren Wilson. Did you not hear any of the eyewitness accounts that said Officer Darren Wilson shot Mike Brown execution?
What you should ask first, Kheri, is where's nobody asked this question. Where is the police report?
Okay.
Yes, I do. I do know this.
No, wait a minute.
The answer to her question is yes.
Well, Sarge, let me ask you, where is the police report coming out of Ferguson?
They're not releasing it. They're not releasing it. That's
another thing. And the lady asked me, what can we do?
They're not releasing it. That's going to have to come either from an FOIA request, or it will come out at a further legal proceeding when and if Officer Wilson gets indicted.
And what we have police officers basically investigating police officers, which is part of the problem.
Make an FOIA request to get the police report. They're not required to release it.
And that's something else that needs to be changed.
Okay,
good, but right now, what are you going to do? Are you going to retroactively go back and make ex post facto law?
No, we're not going to do that. I'm saying for the future, like before you came on, we had made those statements. There's things that need to be done in order to alleviate these problems.
Okay, let's stop. First of all, the audience can only hear one person at a time. But Sarge, first of all, you're over-talking everybody. But let's be clear. All that you see, and I think if I remember you correctly, you're an ex-police officer. That established, it appears to me that you only have paid attention to news that was good toward Officer Darren Wilson. But what about all the eyewitness accounts that have come forward thus far that said Mike Brown was shot execution style? Did you not pay attention to any of that, or have you already made up your mind? As far as the grand jury is concerned, in my opinion, they need to kick that damn grand jury completely out and start all over. Whenever you have a grand jury that's convened, it's supposed to be in secret. There should not be any damn thing such as a leak coming out of a grand jury. How can you believe in a process that would allow a leak on a story this big? I'm sorry, there's too much wrong and too much at stake for this to be done wrong. So in my opinion, if Ferguson has any intention of doing what's right, they should start all over.
That's not Ferguson's responsibility there. That's the governor's. The governor had opportunity to remove Bob McCullough, who this community don't have any faith in, has not have any faith in for about 3 decades. And the way grand juries are convened here, the prosecuting attorney is basically dictating to them what he wants them to hear. That's the way it goes here.
Okay, Jay Nixon. Jay Nixon is your governor there. Jay Nixon, from what I understand, is the only person that could ask Mr. McCullough, your DA down there, to step aside, and he has chosen not to do that. So it appears that your prosecutor down there, Mr. McCullough, has decided that he's going to get the grand jury to do his job, rather than him determine what charges that Officer Wilson should face. He's asking the grand jury to decide that for him, which makes no sense. And so,
and he's biased because his daddy, his father was killed by a black man.
All right, well, see.
No, okay, let's stop. Okay, first of all, I listen to everybody. Y'all know I do that. I'm fair when I open these phone lines, but don't keep cutting me off. Don't do that. That's not right. I listen and I respect everybody's voice on this show. I always have. But when you get through, McCullough needs to step aside. Jay Nixon is not making him do that. Now they've had leaks coming out of the grand jury. There's too much wrong with this particular case, from the beginning all the way forward, from the fact the way Mike Brown was shot, okay, from the way there was no radio call went out, from the fact there was no EMTs called to the scene, from the fact that his body wasn't picked up by the coroner, but it was picked up by some SUV after it laid in the street for 4.5 hours. And then you move forward from there. All of this information coming out 2 months later. There was no police report written. It's just too many things wrong with this particular case. Now, if they want to see trouble, it's going to be trouble when they don't indict Officer Darren Wilson. Everybody knows that.
And let me add one more thing to that you missed.
Okay, now you asked several.
Mike Brown would have had a weapon on him if all the people standing around here wasn't there.
All right, well, she asked several questions, which I would love to answer. I mean, you asked me, I wrote them down as you asked the questions. I'm prepared to answer each and every single question you asked, every one. Number one, first of all, if you don't like the fact that Governor Nixon did not use his gubernatorial power to bypass the grand jury and all these other institutions and appoint a special prosecutor, madam, that is a political remedy. There's nothing you can do about it if he doesn't. You can't force him to. Okay, so, second of all, you don't like the grand jury process? Fine. There's nothing you can do about it short of a revolution that puts in a complete new government. As things stand right now, that Governor Nixon will not appoint a special prosecutor. The remedy for you then is political. Number two, as far as not listening to other witnesses, I have heard them. I've got their videos where they're saying the man's got his hands up and he was shot anyway. I have heard all of that. I am aware of it. There is nothing that has not been publicly released on this information that I'm not aware of. However, those witnesses did not go before the grand jury under oath to be asked what they saw. 6 black, according to the leaks, and I don't know if it's true, but the Washington Post says it is, and if it is so, 6 black eyewitnesses came forward to essentially corroborate Officer Wilson's account under oath before the grand jury. And finally, number 3, the leaks. The fact that you're upset about the fact that there are leaks coming out of the grand jury, the fact that you're upset about the leaks coming, that is something that happens in almost every grand jury with a heater case of note that I've ever heard of. It's not supposed to happen. Grand jury proceedings are supposed to be secret, but things being what they are and somebody who's corrupted and maybe being paid, the leaks almost always occur. I'm sorry, it happens.
Well, we know that, but here's the point. Wait a minute, Kheri, hang on. Officer Wilson, as I said, gave his testimony after every other piece of evidence was presented. So quite natural what he said is going to collaborate with everybody else.
Not so. But much of it was true. But nonetheless, you've got to remember, he didn't get to coach the 6 other eyewitnesses. I'm sure he didn't have access to them.
And the 6 other eyewitnesses didn't have opportunity.
I'm sure he didn't have access to all the forensic evidence that was collected from within his squad car. The blood spatters of Michael Brown.
I can tell you how the blood got
residue, the gunshot residue that they said was present on Michael Brown's hands, the entry and exit angles of the wounds to his body, and all of that. Officer Wilson didn't have access to that, I'm certain.
Yeah, but the person that came and picked up Mike Brown, which was not the St. Louis County coroner, who wonders what happened to that body? Could they had to put some gunshot residue on his body? Could they not have took some blood?
Now, Bianchi,
I'm just asking.
Anything is possible.
Wait a minute.
The answer to your question,
wait a minute. Let me finish.
Yes,
let me finish.
It's possible.
Let me finish. Hang on. Just listen to this now. The way they had that system in Cook County, Illinois prosecutor office called nigger by the pound, where they would bring in black suspects, weigh them, convict them, and whoever convicted 4,000 pounds of black meat before the end of the month will win the office prize. Don't tell me that shit like that don't happen. Nigger by the pound. It's in the paper.
You know what? I will never say anything is impossible, including the possibility of putting gunshot residue on Michael Brown's hands. All of it is possible. Just because it is possible doesn't mean it happened. And even if it did,
and I can give cases where it happened.
To present evidence of it, Bianchi. You just can't say because it's
let me tell you this. Here in St. Louis, Officer Guerrero, he done the same thing with Prince Carter's cousin. Put a gun on him.
Well, then prove he did it in Mike Brown's case. What are you going to say? You can say he said it, so therefore it did?
Do you
know that's not how anything can work?
Hold on, let me jump in. We got 25 minutes left in the show. If you just tuned in, you come to the station tonight. We're talking about the topic Ferguson, the calm before the storm. That's what we're talking about tonight. Ferguson, the calm before the storm. If you have a question or a comment, get on the phone lines now. The phone number is 347-850-8390, then press 1. Again, the number is 347-850-8390, then press 1. We're talking about the protesters and their safety coming up, because we know if they don't indict Darren Wilson, there's going to be another protest. We're talking about the grand jury, Mike Brown, Darren Wilson. We're talking about martial law possibly being imposed. We're talking about the fact that they've just put an Ebola lab in St. Louis. Was that basically a coincidence, or is it by design? Was it there, or is it being put there to intimidate the protesters from coming into Ferguson once they don't indict Officer Darren Wilson? And will they use that as a bioweapon against the protesters? We're talking about all that tonight. We're talking about the shooting itself. Get on the phone line now. We're down to our last 25 minutes of the show. If you have a question or comment about the topic, Ferguson, the calm before the storm.
Ma'am, again, I believe,
Kheri,
I don't believe.
Want to say, Mr. Sarge, I want to say that, what happened to Mike Brown happened before. It happened to Lee Joy Grissom in Culver City, California. This man, Lee Joy Grissom, was actually someone who had, by all accounts, just robbed a business. He had robbed a business, and his sister was driving the getaway car. But the police got behind their car and told them to stop. They stopped their car. The police ordered them out of the car. When Lee Joy Grissom got out of the car, he surrendered. He had his hands up and fingers spread, and the police shot him to death anyway. He was a 27-year-old black man in Culver City, California. Due to the caliber of his witnesses, because they had chased him to an uptown location. So due to the caliber of his witnesses who saw him, in other words, they were upper middle class Caucasians, including an attorney, saw the shooting. And the police were unable to overcome those very respected witnesses, and therefore his family was awarded $8.8 million. I don't know if any criminal charges were placed against police, because that usually does not happen. But I just want to let you know that this happens repeatedly, that police shoot surrendered black men.
Ma'am,
and
I don't know.
cases where the witnesses are highly respected, as they were in the Lee Joy Grissom case. He was killed in April 2010, and his family won their lawsuit in 2013.
So you say they won. In other words, the judicial system served to exonerate their relative's death. And now you're telling me that, therefore, since that case happened that way in Culver City, California, therefore it must be also true in Ferguson, Missouri. I submit to you that is not so. I submit to you that the evidence will have to bear that out.
I submit to you that you
are reputable witnesses come forward with credible eyewitness testimony to back up such a
Police will always cover for police even when they retire. And the bottom line is that we're not trying to take one case and make it applicable to this case. But, sir, I hope you dearly understand that in this country that we live in, and the issues that black folks have with police officers is very founded. And because they did not do things according to protocol, they seem to do that when they arrest black men. But when it comes to police officers, and by the way, you don't see black police officers shooting white men down by and large. Now, do you? So it's not particularly a problem, and like I said before, that is because white folks know that they have been liberated, and they will get out of the car and act all kind of crazy and everything, and I guarantee you a black police officer will not shoot them. But
well, that's a very edifying narrative, but I don't know if you can apply it to Ferguson, Missouri. It's a narrative, man. You just gave me a narrative. You did not speak to any of the facts in Ferguson.
Sir, what I'm trying to simply say is the bottom line is this. Black men and women in this country have a legitimate concern and suspect suspicion of police. And because the authorities did not come forward, I believe, in a forthright, transparent manner, the egg is on their face.
That may be true, but I will say to you again.
Sarge, we don't got that already. You don't say that 15 times. Now, another thing that came out in the newspaper, Kheri, that you should have brought forth about previous incidents that had went on in Ferguson, about the time when they brought the black man, they brought the one black man into the police station after he had pulled over on the highway in a rainstorm. They pull up behind him, run his plates, and his middle name is different than the person who was wanted. They take the man to jail. The man was put in a cell. Then he was beat. He was taken to the hospital, and then they found out that this person is not guilty for what they said he was guilty, and the only thing they can charge him with is blooding the uniforms of the police officer. So Ferguson have a long record of that type of activity. They have records of not keeping records. They have records of where the police are in charge of what goes in their own file, whether it's good or bad, and you know it's always good. So these things in that department has existed for quite some time. Jackson, the police chief, goes back about a decade ago to the Jack in the Box shooting, where Bob McCullough did not release the tapes of what happened on the driveway of the Jack in the Box located there at Handley Road and Highway 70. It's not there anymore because they just put a new express scripts in there. But you had a black man that got killed there from police overreaction. I just wanted to say that. And you know, one other point. We always mention about what Michael Brown has done in his past, and I always mention about his parents and so on. But nobody mentioned that Officer Wilson's mother is a convicted liar and thief. Nobody never brings that up. She has been convicted of lying and stealing.
Wow. And the fact that Officer Wilson came from a department that dismantled because the department was so corrupt. Well, we got to go to
Jennings, Missouri, absolutely. Jennings was right adjacent to Ferguson.
Right. We're going to go to 214-562. Good evening, you're on Center Stage. 214-562. 214-562, you're on Center Stage. Last call. Okay. We're going to move on. Okay, I don't know if 214-562 knew that they pushed their button to speak, but last call. Okay. Yeah, Officer Wilson came from a department where the officers were so corrupt that they dismantled the police department. And I'm going to segue off of that and say that recently there have been police departments that have folded because they have been sued so many times that their insurance dropped them. And I'm putting that out there for all to hear that. They have insurance for situations in which if they're sued. So be it known to all that these people do know that they are supposed to show restraint, whether they do it or not. But if they don't show restraint in enough situations, their insurance companies will drop them. Food for thought.
Well, they have individual bonds on officers. And I always have said that you should sue that bonding company to the limits of the bond, then go after them personally. Go after their personal effects, their houses, their chewing tobacco, their gun, their boats. Go after their personal effects. Then make sure their name go in that national registry so they're not hired by any other police department. We had that case with a black police officer in Pagedale that came up upon a black kid for some reason or another and put a gun in his mouth and shot him. Right on the sidewalk with witnesses standing all around it. Well, of course, nothing happened to him, but we ran his ass out of Missouri. Every place he went, he left Pagedale. He tried to go to Kenlock. Activists showed up at the board meetings and hounded them enough where they wouldn't listen to him and ran him out of there. He went to Berkeley. He got ran out of there. And the last time I know, he was probably headed someplace over in Illinois.
Hello?
Hello? I think, yes. Hello? I'm not sure what that was. Okay, this is the thing. I think we got to stop where, and I think Sarge made a good point when he said that 6 black people, allegedly, have decided to say that they, are going along with the account that Officer Wilson has had. First of all, I'd like to know where are those 6 black people at? Have they been coerced to change their testimony? And first of all, why hasn't anybody heard of these 6 black people prior to now? So all of that suspect. The fact that Darren Wilson took 2 months to come up with his testimony. The fact that allegedly at first he had eye socket issues that had been, injured during the fact that allegedly him and Mike Brown had some altercation in the car, which Mike did all this damage to his eye. We found out later that wasn't true. So it seems like over the course of these 2 months, they constantly tried to gauge what they could get away with and what they can't get away with. Well, I want to put it on record. You ain't getting away with nothing. And if they let you off, all hell's going to break loose. And so, I mean, I don't know how else to put that, y'all. All hell is going to break loose.
That's what I expect will happen. I expect there will be blood flowing in the street. I expect that Officer Wilson will not be indicted. I suspect that the lynch mob behind the racial industrial complex will agitate, stir up racial grievance, and cause this to happen. I have no doubt of it. In fact, I'm preparing for it right now, and I'm in Georgia. So I think it's going to happen. I agree with you there. Doesn't mean it has to, but it will.
And you know what? It's totally preventable. You know what?
Yeah, just lynch a man. Just lynch him.
No, ain't nobody lynching his ass.
Yeah, kind of like they used to do us.
No, get even with him, ism. Just get even with him.
No.
Well, Sarge, one of the reasons he was kicked out of Ferguson, Jenny, is because of things that he done against black folks, and they was legitimate.
And tell me what those things were.
Oh, my goodness.
Tell me what they were. I want to know. You just said he was, so tell me what specific incidents Officer Wilson did that have a reasonable bearing on his using deadly force against Mike Brown.
The complaints that came out of the black community in Jennings, Missouri. Jennings have a majority black population, a black city council, and they asked the police chief to straighten this mess out, who's white,
and
he wouldn't do it.
Officer Wilson, what did he do?
Well, let me tell you.
He shot an unarmed teen who had his hands in the
I noticed I didn't get an answer to my question.
Kheri, you know what he's doing? He's using a tactic because he should know.
No, I'm asking specific questions. I'm not getting an answer.
I'll have it for you, Sarge.
They tried to make public Michael Brown's background, but it's very obvious that when it comes to a police officer, their disciplinary records are heavily guarded, and it only takes the act of Congress and God to get that.
Exactly. Andrew,
so again, police officers together.
Yes.
Kheri, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm listening to all the back and forth, and I'm listening to the gentleman that an ex-cop. I wish he would remember that he is an ex-cop.
Exactly.
And the fact that you're an ex-cop, you're not going to agree with anything that's happened. I have video. I have family members that witnessed my mother's death. I've seen this video so many times. Time that my brother died, these cops claim they feared for their lives. How do you fear for your life when it's 7 deep on top of one man, and everybody in that house, including that man, is saying, I can't breathe? And then at the end of the day, when they notice that he's dead, they rush everybody out the house as if they had lynched him and start taking photographs of him. Instead of checking to see or doing CPR, what their job requires them to do, they posted him up with their knees in his back to prop him up and took pictures and talked about what baseball game they had today and hitting home runs. You can't tell me that these cops don't deserve to go to jail, because they do. The same way that cop that killed Mike Brown, he deserves to go to jail. And for a very long time. If we as citizens kill a cop or shoot at a cop or bleed on a cop, accidentally lose our lunch on a cop, we're being charged up the wazoo, and we're going to jail. And shame on you for saying that this man did nothing wrong. Shame on you. Shame on you for saying that the way that the grand jury set up and said, oh, well, let's be of him because he's on our team. Shame on you. You ought to be ashamed of yourself to even open your mouth and speak to this panel that's talking about the injustice that's going on with the people that are out here trying to fight for their civil rights. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
He should. And you know what? And son, you know what? I think tonight you called into the wrong show. I really do. I mean, it's my opinion.
First of all, madam, I am not in the least bit ashamed of myself. I am proud of myself for standing up for the rule of law. Second of all, I'd like to offer my condolences to that woman for the loss of her relative. But regardless of whether she lost a relative or not, she is not in the sole possessor of facts involving the Mike Brown case. I get to look at them too. I cannot speak to the loss of her relative. I make no attempt to do.
You are a CIA operative. You're just an agitator, and you haven't said in reference to the police wrongdoing or the reality that for police brutality and police misconduct. You said nothing about that. You've only basically protected Officer Wilson. That's the only thing you've done. You could probably care less that Mike Brown was murdered.
Mhm. And you know what? To Sarge, I just want you to know one thing, sir. If your behind ain't in the 1%, you're in the same basket as the rest of us. And you know what? Right now, the line is being drawn in the street.
Yep, it
and
sure
nobody
is.
Well, Kheri, let me tell you something. Just because you're in the 1%,
absolutely.
just because you're in the 1% don't mean that they won't bother you.
No. I'm going to finish this comment. Tonight. The line is being drawn in the street. There are only two sides. Nobody gets to stand in the middle this time. And if your behind ain't in the 1%, guess what? If you're standing on any other line other than the 99, you will be shot in the middle. It's that simple. And anybody who hasn't woke up enough to realize that, you are crazy. The line is being drawn to the street, period. Mike Brown was
if I could say something.
Okay, well, let me finish, P. You can.
Go ahead.
The line is being drawn in the street. And people like you, Sarge, who think that you're better than the rest of us because you're an ex-cop, trust me, you're still in the 99%. You might be a little higher on the rung because you may be Caucasian, but when they get through killing all the blacks with Ebola and everything else and the police brutality, they're going to get your ass too. That's all I have to say on that. You get through. Wake up, because you are definitely still asleep.
Well, I'll say it again. You said there's a battle line being drawn. I know where I'm going to stand, and I'll be there. You won't have to be looking for me. You will be able to see me front and center. I'm standing for the rule of law against the mob. I will not side with the mob. You can be there if you want to. Don't look for me. I'll be there to resist you.
Go home with the rest of your men in blue. You'll see
fine. That's what we're going to do. The fight will be on. Sometimes a fight must be had.
Have a nice day. Have a nice day.
You're clueless. You're delusional and you're clueless.
I think you're delusional, madam. You don't care about fact, truth, the law, or anything else. You care about racial grievance and the mob.
Every show you go on, you start a bunch of stuff, man. What's up with that?
I speak the facts and I get attacked, Bianchi. Now, you know damn well that's not so.
No.
I started talking about the facts.
You hooping and hollering, and every show you go on, you have these problems.
So how do you talk so clear to the head of your white sheep?
And what? Say what, AJ?
I said, how do you talk so clear through the head of your white sheep?
Yes. And you know, and you know what's so sad? Whether you're a current cop or ex-cop, if you condone police shooting people down in the street, shame on you. Because you know what, man, you meet the same fate one day. Because you know what? It's a shame that anybody would condone what Officer Darren Wilson did to Mike Brown. When you get through, if stealing cigarillos, if he even did that, causing someone to get executed in the street, something's wrong with this damn country.
If the account happened as Officer Wilson said it did, I not only condone it, I approve it.
That's probably because, Sarge, you done killed so many black men the same way.
And as long as it's not his son or his nephew, he's okay with it. But the day that his son or his uncle or his grandfather is shot like that, then he'll be on the other side. So he's just talking hot air because if it was somebody in his family, he wouldn't stand for it and he wouldn't tolerate it, just like white folks don't tolerate black cops shooting their white kids.
If a white kid had been shot in the middle of the street by a black officer, execution style, this whole white country would have stood up. Period. Okay? And they would have demanded.
I wonder what Sarge say about them police officers, black police officers working undercover. And to be shot by their own white partners, even though the black police officer got their badge out, showing it to them, and saying, I'm on your side, and they stand over him and shoot him anyway.
Because Sarge is behind is going to be there. When he gets in that line and he thinks he's going to march with his fellas in blue, he's going to realize that, you know, he's just another one of us. I mean, Sarge, you need to wake up.
I think
you're delusional.
Well, he can stand in the line with the blue, but he's going to be the target of votes in blue.
That's exactly what's going to happen. I mean,
but you know, I'm going to say one thing.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to say one thing. You about ready to go off. When you have a small community that's majority black, there's no reason in the world that police force or the fire department should be 99% white. You need to get them people out of your community. A legal way to do it is have local hires to prepare your children where they are well educated, well trained, drug tested, and have a hiring list, and implement that hiring list. Get them suckers out of your community, because your children can't go. Mike Wilson stayed in Crestwood. Crestwood is about 25 to 30 miles from Ferguson. To let you know, you got firefighters in Ferguson that stay in St. Charles County, way on the other side of the river. So that kind of stuff has to stop. You got to get those jobs. Should be for the people in that community, their children. What we send them to school for.
Can I ask something speaking about officer hiring? But the taxpayers of Ferguson, have they paid Officer Darren Wilson for 2 weeks to be on paid leave? Pending the outcome of the grand jury.
That's the way it is. Absolutely, and that's another change.
They're paying for
if he's found to be guilty, he should pay that money. Should be paid back, even if they have to take it out of his pension.
He shouldn't get a pension.
That's crazy. So for 2 months, he shoots a man in the street for nothing, execution style, and he gets a 2-month vacation? What's wrong with this system?
And then when they come pick up the body, it's not a St. Louis County coroner van. It's some SUV. They don't know where that body went before it ended up out in St. Louis County, which is about 5 miles away.
That's what I was going to say. When you were talking about the fact of the gunpowder residue, he shot that boy close range. And forensics states that if you're close enough to that gun when it fires, that residue will end up on you.
Yeah.
So that's a bunch of bull to say that kid had a gun. Okay, if he had one, where's that?
No, he would have had a gun if all the people in the neighborhood hadn't been standing around him and watching. Wilson would have pulled a gun out of his ankle and put it in the kid's hand.
Exactly.
It would have been planted quick, or some drugs. It would have been something.
I think, Angela, what they're saying about the powder residue, they're trying to say that Mike Brown was reaching for the gun. That's how he got it on his hand. But in actuality, if someone's about to shoot, but no, exactly, your hands are up trying to block the shot if you're in close range. So to me, that's totally consistent. When you get through, it's just so many lies that have gone forth. So much BS.
Well, some witnesses say.
Like I said, I put my number out there. Everybody knows how hard of a state Texas is. If there's anybody out there that can help me to change things down here, or to get something started so that the awareness is out there, because I've gone door to door. I've done petitions, and I've gone to city council meetings to be sitting there at 11 p.m. not to be heard, just like somebody said that they put a dog's welfare that got shot in front of my brother's welfare. I need the help, and I'm begging for the help. And like God said, ain't nobody going to help me unless I ask for it, and I'm asking for it.
I'm going to put you in contact with all that I know. Mary Neal, I'll give you Mary's information, and she's willing to help you, and I'll pass on any other information. Okay, y'all,
Kheri, you in Houston?
Okay, y'all need to talk quick because we got to close out of here. Did I hear you, Christopher?
Yeah, just pass her my information as well, please.
Okay. I will give you Christopher Buns and Mary Neal's information, and they both can give you a lot of good information on what you need to do moving forward.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else got any final comments before we get out of here tonight? Okay. Listen, y'all, tonight we talked about the topic, Ferguson, the calm before the storm. And I actually believe that's exactly what's going on right now. I say to all the protesters, be safe out there, because you know what? Satan is definitely busy, and there is no telling what is coming next. So I would say to every protester, be safe. As far as the grand jury is concerned, I ask you to do the right thing. To the family of Mike Brown tonight, my prayers go out to you tonight because, everything's looking like Officer Darren Wilson won't be indicted. If that's the case, God definitely will do his part, but I hope the protests pick up across the country in lieu of what may happen, to say to the world that we're just not going to take it anymore. An officer, does not have the right to take a man's life just because he wants to. That just cannot happen. As far as Officer Darren Wilson, good luck with life from here on, because you know what? Anywhere you are, there's going to be a problem. I mean, nobody's going to make life easy for somebody who just shoots a man down in the street. So good luck with peace and joy and happiness moving forward. As far as martial law being imposed, protesters realize that whatever you do could kick off martial law in your area. As far as the Ebola lab being put in St. Louis, being put in St. Louis recently, and your governor, Jay Nixon, approved it. Was that put there intentionally to scare off the protesters? And if so, are they willing to use it as a bioweapon against the protesters? That's just a question. Don't know if it's even true. Governor Jay Nixon, shame on you. I say to you, shame on you that you didn't stand up, do the right thing, and ask Mr. McCullough to step aside. As far as the shooting itself, it speaks for itself. Officer Darren Wilson shot Mike Brown execution style, plain and simple. And anytime it takes 20 black people as eyewitnesses, and that does not mean anything because one white officer can come forward and say it didn't happen, shame on our system and it needs an overhaul. Y'all, we got to get out of here tonight. It's been a very interesting conversation. I thank all that chimed in on the topic tonight. All that we can do is pray for the best for Ferguson going forward, because we know that there's many games that are being played, and we just hope that some kind of way God steps in and intervenes for the protesters, for Ferguson, and everyone concerned moving forward. Okay, y'all, until next week. Bye-bye.